welcome you watching. This is Exclusive with me, Shavins. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been the biggest greed factory that was operating in India for several years put together. 27,000 crore rupees have been evaded in taxes by these illegal apps who made it look like skill games. A short while back, the Prime Minister spoke on the same very issue. Tonight on This is Exclusive, we put the spotlight on these illegal betting apps that have been operating in India. And finally, there is a crackdown. All this and much more in this edition of This is Exclusive. But up first, let me take you through the headlines we're tracking at this hour.
की जो जरूरतें हैं वो और अधिक सस्ती मिलनी शुरू हो जाएगी। इस बार धनतेरस की रौनक भी और ज्यादा रहेगी।
Prime Minister Modi says government committed to continuous reforms, calls GST reforms double dhamaka before Diwali.
साथियों, कांग्रेस की सरकार ने कैसे आपका मंथली बजट बढ़ाया हुआ था, ये कोई भूल नहीं सकता है। टूथपेस्ट, साबुन, हेयर ऑयल, इन पर 27% टैक्स अब ऐसे हर सामान और सर्विस पर सिर्फ और सिर्फ 5% टैक्स लगा करेगा।
Prime Minister Modi attacks Congress, calls out for high taxes during previous regime. ED shifts focus to mule accounts and illegal betting apps case. Details of how more than 5,000 accounts were created exclusively on This is Exclusive, and how the probe has now revealed much more. Masked man, Chinnaya's Delhi trip and how they met a Supreme Court lawyer. Republic Kannada exposes exclusive details. Ladies and gentlemen, online betting apps scams have emerged as a significant threat in the digital age, exploiting the popularity of the online gambling and lacks regulatory oversight to defraud millions of users. Now, these scams typically involve unregistered or offshore platforms that lure users with promises of high returns, quick payouts, and also attractive bonuses, only to manipulate outcomes, siphon funds, launder money through complex financial networks operating under the guise of legitimate gaming or even sports betting apps. These platforms often violate local laws. Tonight, we have breaking inputs on the investigation that is being carried out. Multiple betting apps, and the face of these apps have essentially been top celebrities. In fact, as we speak today, Shikhar Dhawan, cricketer Shikhar Dhawan is now being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate. Now, it's over 7 hours and the questioning still continues. The Enforcement Directorate, in fact, has launched a relentless crackdown on the shadowy world of mule accounts fueling illegal betting apps, exposing sophisticated web of financial crime. Now, these dummy accounts created to obscure the trails of deposit and withdrawals are at the heart of these illicit operations, with over 5,000 Benami accounts being identified as part of the scam, active for mere hours to evade detection. These accounts serve as fleeting conduits for fueling illicit funds, often siphoned through hawala networks to mask their origins and destinations. The Enforcement Directorate's probe reveals how these mule accounts are used to launder vast sum of money. In fact, let me just take you through some of the details that we have right now. In fact, I'm also going to break it down for you as to how exactly were a large number of people essentially being lured in this. Now, how exactly did the crackdown essentially begin? It turns out that Enforcement Directorate officers themselves got them registered in these very accounts and then started figuring out as to how exactly this algorithm essentially worked. It turned out that the algorithm was designed in such a manner that eventually you would actually lose money. And the fact that just to get the users on board, they would ensure that people would earn some money, and thereafter the algorithm designed in such a manner that you end up losing much more money. In fact, it does turn out that there was money at stake, and a lot of people actually lost their money because of this. Well, let's now take you through some numbers to get a sense of how large this betting app scam has been, or how big this market has been in India. In just 3 months of 2025, more than 1.6 billion visits happened on illegal betting websites. The online betting market in India is now worth over $100 billion, which means growing 30% every year. Many apps use mask of skill games to look legal. Results are mostly based on luck, not really skill. Fantasy games are involving money and rigged algorithms. Now, if money is at stake, it is certainly not a game. It is essentially gambling. Now, what I'm going to do is first go across to our reporter on the ground. Aditya has been tracking this story very closely from the Enforcement Directorate's office here in the national capital as Shikhar Dhawan. In fact, I'm just given to understand 7 hours on, Shikhar Dhawan is still being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate. So far, we do not have any statement coming in from Shikhar Dhawan with regards to what is his position on this entire matter. Aditya is joining us on this broadcast. Aditya, 2 important details emerging. One, with regards to the investigation that has been carried out, but the Enforcement Directorate says that it is because of celebrities like Shikhar Dhawan, many people had joined these very apps. First to you, with regards to where does the investigation really stand? Is he still being questioned? If you can just move around a little bit and give us a sense of what's really happening at the Enforcement Directorate's office.
Yeah, the first thing first is that the interrogation is undergoing for last around 8 hours now. And what the investigation is all about today is to investigate the money trail. Now, money trail here is the bigger question which the ED is here to interrogate and investigate. The first about the company. The company which is here in question is 1xBet, and the 1xBet here in India, it's actually functioning on 2 probabilities. The first, either it's an offshore company which is funneling money into India, or second, the company has registered some domestic company which are a shell company which keeping it front but operating from behind. Now, in these 2 situations, what actually happened is that the ED is now investigating that if you were being paid the money for endorsement or advertisement, who paid you money? That money came directly from the offshore account, or that money came from the domestic account, which can actually help to ED to understand that if that company, 1xBet, is operating in India, it is operating via offshore account, or it is a shell company in India.
Well, Aditya, I'll request you to stay on with us as I'm getting in more details of the investigation that has been carried out so far. In fact, not just that, as per estimates, top betting apps are essentially evading 27,000 crore rupees in taxes every year. Now, that's a massive tax fraud. Top sources now confirming to us that betting apps have evaded about 27,000 crore rupees in taxes. In fact, not just that, media companies are also now under the scanner of the investigating agencies, saying that about 50 crore rupees, that's the amount that has been received by media companies to essentially broadcast advertisements of these betting apps which have been endorsed by these celebrities. I'm going to put out the details of all these celebrities who've actually gone ahead and endorsed these apps. In fact, what they are essentially looking at from the questioning that is being carried out is the very fact that whether at all they were basically doing this with knowing fully well that these betting apps are illegal in nature. Can we just quickly take our viewers through all the celebrities who have essentially endorsed not one, multiple betting apps that have been registered. In fact, let me also go back to my colleague Aditya, who's getting us more details. Aditya, 27,000 crore rupees as taxes that have been evaded by multiple, a dozen such applications that do exist. In fact, the Prime Minister just now, a short while back, spoke on the same very issue, which I'm going to play out in a short while from now, what the Prime Minister had to say about these online betting apps that do exist.
Well, yes, 27,000 crore have been evaded, and the whole point is about the modus operandi. That what was it, and that was creating creating account which would operate for hour, like 3 hour or 4 hour basis, and then that account will funnel money from domestic to offshore accounts, and that is the modus operandi which is being now investigated by the ED.
Aditya, I'll just request you to stay on with us as we are getting in more details. Shikhar Dhawan, 8 hours on, still being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate. Not very sure as to what possible action is likely to be taken by the Enforcement Directorate, whether at all there is any sort of punitive action likely to be taken against the cricketer. That is still not known at this stage. But remember, this is the second summon that was issued by the Enforcement Directorate to the former cricketer. This is the first appearance that he has actually made before the Enforcement Directorate, and 8 hours on, the questioning is still going on. He appeared roughly around 11 o'clock this morning. What we are given to understand is that the Enforcement Directorate is essentially trying to find out whether at all they were in the know-how as to whether these apps were illegal, and despite that they have actually gone ahead and endorsed these very applications. I'm going to quickly first take you to the full frame graphics of the number of such celebrities who have actually endorsed these applications, and why the Enforcement Directorate believes, not these graphics, the other graphic which has all the celebrities who have been summoned so far by the Enforcement Directorate. Over 20 celebrities are now actually under the scanner. To be specific, 29 that have already been called in for questioning. In fact, some of top celebrities down south have already appeared before the Enforcement Directorate. On your screens right now, the celebrities who have actually come under the scanner of the Enforcement Directorate. What is it that the federal agency has to say? The federal agency essentially believes that because of the endorsement coming in from these very celebrities, number of people were basically duped. I'm just going to quickly wrap up. Before I do that, a quick wrap of what we know so far, and then we're going to also play out the first response coming in. In fact, the Prime Minister has also spoken on this entire issue. In fact, they say that multiple apps that have been promoted by Harbhajan Singh, Yuvraj Singh, Sonu Sood, Suresh Raina, Urvashi Rautela, and several social media influencers, despite a ban. Media houses have actually received about 50 crore rupees for promotion. They have also been identified. In fact, they have violated the IT and the Binami Act, FEMA Act, and because of which they are now under the scanner. Money laundering, tax evasion, and youth targeting, youth targeting, these are some of the reasons why the investigation is being carried out. 22 crore Indian users of various betting apps, 11 crore regular users, 27,000 crore rupees have been evaded as taxes. In fact, this is something that the Prime Minister spoke a short while back. Listen to what he had to say.
है कि कहते तो गेमिंग है, लेकिन हो जाता है जुआ, और इसलिए सरकार ने, और बहुत बड़ा निर्णय है ये, बड़ी बड़ी ताकतें वो कभी नहीं चाहती थी कि ऐसा कानून आए और देश में गैम्बलिंग पर प्रतिबंध आ जाए, लेकिन आज एक ऐसी सरकार है जिसमें पॉलिटिकल विल है और जिसके दिल में देश के उज्जवल भविष्य की चिंता है, बच्चों के भविष्य की चिंता है, और इसलिए हमने ऐसे किसी भी दबाव की परवाह किए बिना, किसको क्या लगेगा, किसको क्या नहीं लगेगा, इसकी परवाह किए बिना गेमिंग के संबंध में, ऑनलाइन गेम्स के संबंध में कानून लाए हैं। ऐसे अनेक ऑनलाइन गेम्स थे जिनसे हमारे स्टूडेंट्स प्रभावित हो रहे थे, पैसों के खेल चलते थे, ज्यादा कमाने के इरादे से लोग पैसे डालते थे। कुछ जगह से तो मुझे रिपोर्ट मिलते थी, परिवार में महिलाएं, मोबाइल फोन तो सबके पास थे, वो भी दिन में सब लोग घर से चले गए, फिर क्या करे, तो वो भी खेल लेती थी। आत्महत्या की घटनाएं मिलती थी, कर्जदार बन जाते थे, यानी बहुत बड़ा, यानी परिवारों के परिवार तबाह हो गए, आर्थिक नुकसान हो रहा था। और ये बीमारी ऐसी है कि नशे की तरह लत लग जाती है, ये गेम्स ऐसी चीजें होती है, और पैसे लूटने वाले तो आपको टैप कर ही लेते, फंसा देते हैं, और ऐसा कंटेंट भी बढ़िया बढ़िया लाते हैं कि कोई भी फंस जाता है उसमें, और सब परिवारों के लिए चिंता का विषय बन गया था। और इसलिए मैं कहता हूं कि ये जो कानून बना है वो कानून अपनी जगह पे है, लेकिन बच्चों को जागरूक करना।
Shift focus now, ladies and gentlemen, the Dharmasthala issue, a story that we have been tracking very closely. Let me take you through some of the details now basically emerging of the masked man. In fact, the mass burial case, which initially sparked by shocking allegations of mass graves and systemic violence, has taken a dramatic turn. Now, as you've had the federal agency shifting its focus to a web of foreign funding, illegal transactions, and a potential conspiracy that is aimed at tarnishing the revered Dharmasthala temple in Karnataka. Now, what began with a former sanitation worker's claims, so-called claims of burying over 100 bodies, many allegedly bearing signs of sexual assault between 1995 and 2014, has unraveled into a complex narrative. Now mired in accusations of orchestrated defamation against one of India's most sacred pilgrimage sites. The Enforcement Directorate has stepped in. They've zeroed in on NGOs like who have been receiving funds to fuel a propaganda. Now, first, what we're going to take you through is some of the details of the investigation that has been carried out so far. And more importantly, what's the larger conspiracy at play? Tonight on This Is Exclusive, we put the spotlight on the larger conspiracy that has now been unraveled.
Weeks after Republic Kannada exposed the Dharmasthala mass burial hoax, the Enforcement Directorate is now taking a hard look at the involvement of YouTubers and foreign players in the conspiracy. The NGOs that received foreign funding will now be under scanner. The ED has asked for relevant documents from the police with the focus on NGOs Samvad and Oranadi. Sources say that banks have been asked to share account details as well as information on dubious transactions. Officials suspect that the funds may have been used to support campaigns. The development comes just a few days after Republic exposed how an anti-temple gang was operating to take down the Dharmasthala empire.
ED investigation, we hope, will also expose this angle of who these handlers are who instructed the Chief Minister to constitute an SIT when he was not willing to do so himself at the first instance. Who were the people sitting in Bangalore who were directing every single day, like a very well-planned script, this Maoist masked man asking him to go to this place, another place tomorrow, telling, cooking up stories every single day, coordinating media blitzkrieg at an international level, hundreds of YouTube videos, YouTubers' payments, lawyers, activism in courts. All of this needs to be exposed, and a deterrent message should be sent to all these vested interest groups that such misadventures will come at a very big cost.
One after another, the skeletons are tumbling out. Meanwhile, the political war of words continue over the investigation.
ಅವರೇನೋ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಇವರೇನೋ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ನಾನು ಒಬ್ಬ ಗೃಹ ಸಚಿವನಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಅದೆಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೋಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ.
ಬಿಜೆಪಿಯವರ ಹೋರಾಟಕ್ಕೆ ವಿದೇಶದಿಂದ ಹಣ ಬರ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತನಿಖೆ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಅಂತ
ಈಗ ಅವರು ಇಡಿನವ್ರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ನೀವೇ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ. ನೋಡಿ, ಅವರು ಯಾವ ಟರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಂದ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ನಮಗೆ. ಅವರು ಇಡಿ ಯೂಶುವಲಿ ಬರೋದು ಹಣಕಾಸಿನ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಂತ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಯಾವ ಆಂಗಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೋ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ನಮಗೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೇನು ಸಂಬಂಧ ಇದೆ? ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಆಫ್ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಏನು 164 ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಚಿನ್ನಯ್ಯ ಹೇಳಿದಾನೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಮಾತ್ರ ನೋಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು.
As the case unravels, it's game over for the anti-temple conspirators.
Startling twist to the Dharmasthala mass burial hoax. The special investigation team is now probing a trip that was taken in the first week of June 2025 by 4 key figures: CN Chennaya, the masked man Sujata Bhatt, Jayant T and Girish, who boarded a train to Delhi allegedly carrying a skull that sparked the sensational allegations against the revered Karnataka temple. The group that has been linked to the anti-temple activism reportedly stayed at a lodge in the capital and met a Supreme Court lawyer based in Haryana, who directed them to a senior Karnataka advocate, KV Dhananjay. Now, what we are given to understand is that the SIT probe resulting in the investigation that has been carried out so far, they are essentially looking at 2 angles. Whether at all there is a possibility that the masked man Sujata Bhatt, Jayant and Girish, who arrived in Delhi in the first week of June, what was the purpose of it in the first place? We are given to understand 4 accused met a Supreme Court lawyer based in Haryana, and no proof of whether the skull was actually carried to New Delhi. Now, that is an aspect that is still being probed as of now. And finally, we are given to understand that a Karnataka-based advocate actually met the conspirators. Or not just that, there's also another angle that is being looked into, that of a meeting between a Congress parliamentarian and 4 conspirators. Shift to focus now to the other big story that we're getting to you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. An HAL team is likely to travel to United States of America later this month to hold the 5th round of talks with the GE Aerospace on the joint production plan for the GE F414 engine. And in fact, we are given to understand a GE Aerospace team is also slated to visit India shortly to conclude the final negotiations on the F414 technology transfer and production agreement. The aim is essentially to finalize the contract by 2026 by March, paving the way for the local manufacturing at HAL's Bengaluru facility and first engine to be delivered by mid-2029. Let me go across to our senior correspondent, Defense, Ishan, getting us the latest details. Ishan, we do have a confirmation now that the HAL team would be visiting US by the end of the month. In terms of the engine deliveries, what's the timeline like? And what is it that you're picking up from HAL?
Shravan, after speaking to HAL officials, it has been confirmed that HAL contract negotiation team will be traveling to the United States at the end of this month. This will be the 5th round of talks between them. The last round of talks concluded with indigenization production of up to 80% of components locally in India. This increased the cost of the technology transfer by $1 billion, and this is as of December 2024. Now these talks are at the final stages. This transfer of technology talk is being held. Negotiation is being held in Boston, United States, and thereafter the GE Aerospace team is likely to visit India for conclusion of these talks. And once the talks are concluded, it is expected that production of these F414 engines will start in mid of 2029. This is the original MOU was signed between HAL and GE Aerospace back in June 2023 during Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States, and thereafter the contract negotiation committee was formed in December of 24. Thereafter 4 rounds of negotiations have already taken place, and now the 5th round is going to be taking place shortly.
Just a quick answer from you with regards to the reciprocal visit that is likely to happen by later this month, or perhaps after that. That is from the GE Aerospace. What was the reason why there was a significant delay? Because the announcement was made, and it turns out that there several months have lapsed. Any word with regards to why there has been a delay?
Shravan, there have been no specific reasons that have been given for the specific delays. However, HAL has expressed its discontent with GE regarding the 404 deliveries, and this now has been fast-tracked. And since it has been fast-tracked, it is likely to head towards concluding the final deal by end of 2026.
Thank you very much, Ishan, for getting us the latest details. That's all that we could pack in this edition of This Is Exclusive. Coming up, trending with my colleague Rakshit.
MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल, ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े, क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ, डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड में मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा। अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ। सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम, रहो बेफिक्र।
आर प्योर शाही पनीर मसाला, डिलीशियस, हेल्दी एवरीडे।
मुस्कुराए लड़खड़ाए जिंदगी, चाहे जो भी हो।
सर, पेशेंट के लिए कौन सा रूम प्रेफर करेंगे आप?
जिंदगी भर के प्यार का कोई रेट कार्ड नहीं होता। टाटा AIG हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस, विद यू लाइक फैमिली, विद यू ऑलवेज।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ, डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड में मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा। अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ। सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम, रहो बेफिक्र।
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद, यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा, क्या स्वाद है। अरे मेरे राजा,
मुस्कुराए लड़खड़ाए जिंदगी, चाहे जो भी हो।
सर, पेशेंट के लिए कौन सा रूम प्रेफर करेंगे आप?
जिंदगी भर के प्यार का कोई रेट कार्ड नहीं होता। टाटा AIG हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस, विद यू लाइक फैमिली, विद यू ऑलवेज।